Hello and welcome. It's Jennifer. I have a lot to share with you today. Today I'm going to show you 5 different ways of doing inked masking, and this results in one-layer cards. They're all simple and quick, so I'm hoping that it inspires you to give it a try. So I'm going to show you 5 different ways. I'm going to move fast through them since there are so many cards, but I'm going to start first with masking a corner. This is a great way to kind of create a focal point in the corner of a card to kind of focus on your sentiment and image that you use. Now, I just wanted to mention that all the cards that I'm doing today are a little bit smaller. They're 3.5 by 5 inches tall. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into this first one. I'm going to show you a few variations of inking on this and give you some tips along the way. Now, the stamp sets that I'm using today are all part of the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero kit release. Some of the products are included in the kit, and some of the products are add-on products that are available, and I'll link to them all below. So I'm going to be using some bunnies from this stamp set that you see here. This one happens to be part of the kit. Limited time only, so be sure to check it out. This is one of the add-on products. I'm going to be using a sentiment from that. Okay, so I'm using my mini Misty since I'm making several cards today, but you do not need to use a Misty stamping tool. You can use an acrylic block and do the same techniques. So I'm going to ink this up with a Copic-friendly black ink and stamp this. Now, all the cards that I'm using today, I created out of Bristol Smooth cardstock. Bristol Smooth cardstock is great for ink blending. It really is a smooth cardstock, but you can try whatever cardstock you have. I've been using this Bristol Smooth more and more lately, and it really works nice. Okay, so I'm going to do just some quick, simple Copic marker coloring on these. You could do any coloring that you want to. I did the Copics because they're quickest for me. And I'm doing 4 cards, I believe, here, so that I can have a few different examples to show you. I also, a few times throughout this video, kind of alter the stamped image. Here I'm actually adding some green areas on the top of the carrot. So you'll see me draw some black lines around it later. And I actually also add a smile to the bunnies. Sometimes you can do simple things to alter an image just to work better for whatever look you're going for. Now for the bunny, I'm keeping it simple. I'm just adding some gray shading so that I can have a white bunny. Now keep in mind when you do Copic markers on a one-layer card, you can sometimes see the color on the inside. This doesn't bother me, but if it bothers you, you can just go ahead and cut a piece of cardstock and glue it to the inside of the card to hide it. Now I'm using a black pen to trace around that green that I added to the top of the carrots. Sometimes simple adjustments can make all the difference. Okay, now I need to mask this bunny and carrot. I could stamp it and cut out a mask, but instead, to save time with this intricate little image, I'm going to use a Molotow masking pen. Basically, you color this over your stamped image, let it dry completely, and then you can ink over it and then remove it when you're done. You could also use rubber cement in an old brush that you don't care about to cover over this, and I'll link to a video where I show that. But basically, I'm just covering it with this blue product and letting it dry for like 15 minutes before I come back and ink over it. This will protect all the coloring underneath. It's pretty amazing how it works. Now I'm just using a square Post-it here to help me line up a corner with my masking tape. Okay, so here I have some masking tape that I'm just going, it's like Post-it tape, I should say. I'm going to put a piece along the bottom and a piece along the side. And again, I'm using that orange Post-it just to make sure that I get these Post-it strips squared up in the corner. Now, if you don't have Post-it tape like this, you can just use some scrap paper and just use some temporary tape to hold it in place. So now I have a corner masked off, so I can just add a bit of color to the corner. Now, people often ask how to do soft blending, and I'm going to share some tips today. I'm going to be using Distress ink for the first example. I'm using a mini ink blending tool. This is the round one, and I highly recommend it. Whenever I ink, I'm not really inking with the whole tool, but just the edge. I kind of have it at an angle. I always rub some of the excess ink off onto scrap paper, and I start off my project and slowly work my way on, and I'm using a very, very light hand. You can always add more ink, but you can't take it away. So go in very, very lightly, wiping off the excess ink, having a gentle hand, and just keep adding color on top of color till you get the results that you want. If you go light-handed and take off the excess ink first, you won't get those harsh lines that sometimes you get if you go in with a heavy hand. So I started out with twisted citron and broken china so I could get some soft green and blue. But I decided I wanted a more true green, so I went in with with mowed lawn green and added that on top of the twisted citron. You can see I'm still going to end up with light color because I use such a light hand. Now I can remove the tapes and you can see the nice masked corner that's very soft that brings your attention to that image. Now to remove that Molotow masking that we put on top, you can use your finger to lightly rub it off, or you can use a dry cloth. These work fine, but a little bit later in this video, I'm going to show another product that really helps with getting that Molotow masking off quickly, but you really don't need it. You could just use a dry cloth as you see here. It just kind of rubs off and you pull it away, and check that out. You have that bunny and carrot completely masked. It was completely masked from the inking we did on top, and you get a nice clean card. Now I do go in with a black glaze pen to add a little bit of dimension to those eyes, and I added just a little bit of shimmer with a Wink of Stella pen to the ears and the carrot. So I'm keeping this simple, one layered. I think sometimes those simple cards are the best, and I like how the masking brings the attention to that cute little bunny. Now with this example, I did the exact same thing, but I'm going to first mist it with a little bit of shimmer spritz, just kind of off at an angle from that corner. From about 2 feet away, just give it a few mists so that it has some shine to it, with most of the shimmer being focused in that corner. Then I will remove the tape again, and I'll have another card example, but this one will have a little bit of shimmer to it. Now once that's dry, I can go ahead and remove the Molotow masking. This is an adhesive eraser. This is a nice tool to have. It's inexpensive, and this helps to remove that Molotow masking fluid very easily from your stamped image. You could also use this to remove adhesive from any paper that you don't want. It's a nice, inexpensive, handy tool to have. Now I wanted to do another example. This is all done the same way. I used a different sentiment for this one, but the same inks. This time I'm going to splatter a little bit of water over the inking just to have a little bit of interest in the background. So I just added some water to my work surface here, put some on a brush, and I'm just flicking it onto my paper. This just adds, again, a little bit of interest because when the distress ink meets that water, it reacts. And so you get these little kind of splatters in the background of white. It ends up looking like white because you're kind of removing the ink from those areas. Now I am a control freak and I wanted some dots where I didn't get them. So I'm using my brush to lightly put dots of water, dab it away, and you get that little bit of interest in the background. So with these 4 bunny cards with the masked corner, I'm just showing you some different things you can do with masked inking. Now on this one, same thing. I covered it with Molotow again. This time I'm using Distress Oxide inks, which have some pigment to them, so they're a little bit different than Distress inks. I'll link to a video that talks more about them. But I've found that Distress Oxide inks blend even easier because they stay wet a little bit longer. You can smooth them out if you get a harsh line, which is really nice. They're more forgiving, I feel. So for this one, I'm using fossilized amber in broken china to add some yellow and blue to this corner here. Again, I'm using the inks the same way, a light hand and some soft blending, but I use a little bit of a heavier hand than I do with my distress ink because I find these blend so well. Now this will give me a little bit of a smoother blended result when I'm done. I'll try to hold it up so you can see a comparison on the screen, but it is hard to see on the screen. In real life, you do get smoother results. And if you get a little extra ink where you don't want it, you can kind of wipe it away with a cloth, as you saw me do there. And then I can go ahead and remove those masks that I created and look at that nice blending that you get. And you can see the green that I got where I overlapped the 2 colors. So let me show you these 2 up close. The one on the left is regular Distress ink. The one on the right is Distress Oxide ink. And you can see it's a smoother, blended, kind of soft, creamy look with the Oxide inks. Now, if you don't have distress inks of any kind, just do the ink blending with whatever ink you have. You can still do the technique with them. Wanted to show you a quick tip. Whenever I have a 1-layer card like this, I want my black stamped images to be nice and crisp. One of the things you can do if you have the MISTI stamping tool is go back and stamp the black again, just to darken it. Sometimes when you ink over it, you kind of hide some of the black or soften it. So I want to go back in and make it nice and crisp. I use VersaFine black ink for this since it's such a dark black ink, but you could just restamp any black ink you may have and check out how crisp that is. Now I did decide that some of my masking was a little bit too far from the edges, so I trimmed these down so they're actually smaller than 3.5 by 5.5. But that's okay. You can put them in a bigger envelope and I think they'll still work out fine. So I showed you 4 variations of doing a masked corner. I really like this design. I did go back and add some white gel pen details. That's always fun when you're keeping a card very simple. It just makes it kind of pop, especially on the inked background. Okay, so we did a corner. Let's do masking and inking along a line. This is great for doing like a sky and grass scene, which I thought worked really well with this mushroom stamp set that is one of the newest products from Hero Arts this month. Again, I'm going to do smaller cards. These are 3.5 by 5 inches, again created with Bristol Smooth cardstock. I'm going to put my card kind of in the middle up against the bottom edge of my MISTI, but you could use an acrylic block if you wanted to. I have some Post-it tape that I'm going to mask off the bottom 3/4 of an inch so that I can have a line where the sky and the ground meet. So I'm just going to kind of plan out my stamping here, and I actually wanted to stamp these very close together. So I did a few mushrooms at a time instead of mounting them all at once. Now I'm going to skip through some of this just to save some time. All I did was stamp some mushrooms along that border line that we created with some black Copic-friendly inks. So there we have our little mushroom scene. I varied them a little bit. On one I did a flower, on one I did a snail. I just wanted a variety. Okay, so I did some Copic coloring, nothing fancy. You can see the colors that I used there on the bottom. I kind of went for some playful colors here with some blues and oranges thrown in. After I did all of my coloring, I went ahead and colored over all of the mushrooms with my Molotow masking pen. This is very fast to do, and again, you can use rubber cement if you don't have this pen. After I've colored over everything, I'm going to give it some time to dry. You want to make sure that the Molotow is completely dry before you ink over it. It takes about 15 minutes. Now that I have my Molotow dry, I'm going to use my Distress ink to add very soft blue right along the bottom here. Again, you'll see I'm going in very soft-handed, and I'm wiping off some of the excess ink either on scrap paper or on the mask itself. And then I'm just kind of pulling the color up onto my card. After I have the blue down, I'm coming in with a little bit of mustard seed, just to add like a sunshine kind of up there in the corner, going very soft and inking off on my scrap paper first. I then go back to the blue to kind of blend over it and make sure that they blend nicely together. So with that one, I used regular traditional Distress inks. Now for this one, I'm going to use Distress Oxide ink. Sorry, I'm off to the side of the screen there. I didn't mean to. I'm starting out with Broken China Distress Oxide ink. Remember, there's a pigment in this ink that makes it even easier to blend out and smooth. So if you get a heavy spot of ink, you can kind of work over it and smooth it around since it's wet a little bit longer. I also find it easier to blend 2 colors in a small area with the Distress Oxide inks. So with this one, I did the Broken China. Now I'm coming in with Fossilized Amber and adding like a little bit of that yellow above the blue. And you'll see in this small area, I'm able to blend the 2 colors together very easily. I'm going in with a very soft hand, have the inking tool kind of at an angle, and look at that beautiful blending that you get. It's nice and smooth and creamy. But again, if you don't have Distress inks or Distress Oxide inks, you can do this with any dye or pigment ink you have. Now the bottom one there I did with the Oxide ink. The top one is with regular Distress ink, and you can see the difference. The bottom one is much creamier. Okay, so now that we've done the sky, I can just move my mask up to the top and now come in with a green ink, again very light-handed, and add the green below that border line. So with this technique, I'm showing you that a simple masked line is great for creating a scene on a 1-layer card because you can do the sky and the ground. Okay, so I'm using my adhesive eraser to rub away the Molotow masking. Now, sometimes you get like a glob of the masking that you just need to pull off the corner of your eraser and then you can continue on. So this one I did Distress inks. You can see the background there. I added some tiny little white dots with a gel pen just for a little bit of interest. Now this next one, I splattered a little bit of water on and dabbed it away so we could just have that look of texture in the background. It kind of looks like rain on it. And this one's the one that I did with the Distress Oxide ink. It's nice and smooth, and I love that sentiment. I thought it was really fun and playful. So that's our second way of using masking with inking for one layer card. Next, we're going to use a stamp to do the masking, or we're going to follow our stamp to do the masking. This card is really easy to do, so I actually created 4 of them exactly alike. I used a few different Hero Art stamp sets here. I'm using the frame from the stamp set on the left, and I'm using the radish and the carrots from the stamp set on the right, and the sentiment that says rooting for you from this stamp set. I encourage you to dig through your stamp sets. You probably have some that would work for this card design. Now, since I want to line up my frame right in the center top of my card, I'm using this printed transparency grid over my card to help me make sure I find the center of the card. So I'm just going to hold that over my card. Even if you don't have a MISTI, that printed transparency grid is really helpful. So I'm going to just line that frame up. I'm going to add my sentiment and then also the little vegetables for inside of the frame. Once I have everything where I need it, I can close my MISTI on it and I have all my stamps mounted together, which really saves me a lot of time. But again, you could do this on acrylic block if you wanted to. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this on 4 cards. Again, this is Bristol Smooth cardstock, cut to 3.5 by 5 inches. And I'm stamping with a Copic Friendly Black ink. And actually, the ink that I'm using now is the Hero Arts Intense ink. I just started using this and I'm really happy with the results. I also stamped this on a piece of scrap paper that you see here, and I'm going to cut the center out. So you can see how I'm cutting the center of that frame out, and I'm going to create a mask this way. I did color all my little images, as you can see on the cards below. Colored them with Copic markers and covered it with the Molotow masking fluid and let it dry, while I go ahead and cut out this mask. So I'm cutting on the inside center, and now I have a quick mask created. I'm going to tape it over the frame on my card, just using some temporary tape, and I'm using Distress ink and the Broken China with my ink blending tool to do soft color kind of coming in from the edges. So really what I did was created a mask out of a stamped image, and look at that beautiful blending. I'm going to do this on all 4 of my cards. Again, this was a pretty quick one to mass produce. If you don't have that masking fluid, you could also just stamp and create a mask out of paper. After I let my ink dry for a bit, I'm using my adhesive eraser to rub away the masking fluid, and check that out. You have a nice simple card ready to go. I like to add a little interest to these simple cards, either with a white gel pen or with some shimmer. So I'm going to put the mask back on and give it a few spritzes with my shimmer spritz so that the shimmer just ends up in that framed area. So there we have 4 very quick cards using a stamped image to create our masking for 1 layer card. Okay, so moving on to the next one. This is doing freehand masking. Now, freehand scares a lot of people, but I'm going to show you this is really easy, and I'm not good at drawing, and I was able to pull it off. So I have this bunny here. He's actually the bunny that was working in the garden, but instead of stamping the whole image, I just stamped part of it and I changed it into a paintbrush. I thought it looked like he was kind of painting there. So I have my little gardening bunny here. I'm going to put it in my MISTI and I'm going to stamp this with black ink. But when I ink it up, I'm not going to ink up the bottom of his gardening tool, just the handle, so that I can change it into a paintbrush. So look at stamps that you have and think about how you can partially ink them and then change it a little bit so that you can get a completely different subject or different theme. So now I'm just going to use my pen to draw a little paintbrush tip. I'm not an artist for drawing by hand. If I can do this, you can too. I just did kind of like a teardrop shape. Now, using one of the cards that I messed up, I'm going to use that as just a scrap to draw the wave line of the paint that he's painting. So I'm using a pencil here. You can see I mess up a few times. Once I'm happy with the wave line, I'm just going to cut that with my scissors to create my freehand mask. So I'm cutting right along that line, and I'm keeping both pieces, both halves that I create here, so that I can use them to create the mask. Okay, so now I'm going to tape those 2 pieces together, but at an angle, so that they kind of meet up at the tip of his brush and then kind of spread out as you go. So now I have like a painted area that he created. So think about all the different things you could freehand cut to create an edge for inking. You could do waves or you can do grass, whatever you want. This one just kind of seemed to work with this image. So I'm applying a rainbow of Distress inks using my ink blending tool. This is pretty easy to blend since it's a small area and I'm using a lot of color. So I'm coming in this time with more of a heavy hand. And since this mask I made out of cardstock, I can make this card many times by using that mask over and over again. I could even keep the mask in with my stamp set where I store it so that I can go back and do more in the future. Now I wanted to give this some shine, add some interest to this one layer card, so I'm going over it with my Wink of Stella shimmer pen. But keep in mind the Wink of Stella is moisture that kind of moves that ink, moves that distress ink and blends it. So you're actually blending it even more when you go over it with that shimmer pen. So I went through my Hero Art stamp sets and I found this sentiment that I thought was fantastic to add with this colorful card. So I'm stamping that with black ink, and I double stamped it because the first time I didn't stamp it very well. And there we have the final card. And I created 2 of them like this. Okay, for the final example of using masks for inking on one layer cards, I'm going to use a die cut to create the mask, or a die. I actually used a border die today, but you could use any shape that you want to. Any die works for masking. I'm starting out by stamping a simple apple from this Hero Arts stamp set. Stamped it, and I have colored it with Copic markers, and I hand cut a little mask to put over it. You could have used the masking fluid, but I thought since this was simple that I would just stamp it on some Post-it tape and cut it out. Now I'm using a Hero Arts wood-mounted stamp. That's a basket of apples. There's no sticker on this because it's just a prototype, by the way. And I'm going to stamp this overlapping that single apple. After I stamp it, I'm going to color it with Copic markers, and I use some of the same reds, browns, and greens that I've used on all the cards today. I keep my Copic marker coloring very simple, and I use the same colors over and over. Now I have this border die. It cuts these little like hills or little valleys. They're like slits where you can tuck in the little vegetables that you cut out. Absolutely adorable die. But I'm going to be using this, just the border, the negative space border. But that border die could be used for waves or hills, whatever you want. So I've got this piece here that I'm going to use as my border mask, my die cut border mask. Now before I do this, I need to mask off the back of my card since I'm laying my card open just to make it easier. So I'm putting some Post-it tape along the back part of my card, right up against the seam of the card. Now I almost forgot that I need to mask my little apple scene. So I'm using the Molotow masking pen once again, and I'm just going to color over the bottom of the basket since I'm only inking over the bottom area. Once that's completely dry, I can start my inking. So I'm going to put down the border mask, and I'm just going to hold it there. I'm not even going to tape it down. And I'm going to use my ink blending tool with Distress Ink in the Mowed Lawn Green. And I am just doing messy inking here. I am not taking the time to blend. I'm not taking the time to be perfect. And every time I'm just moving the mask down a little bit and over to the side a little bit. No pattern, just going to town here with the inking, nothing fancy. I just want some variation on that bottom area of the card to make it look like grass. Okay, so once I'm done with this, I remove it, and there we have our little grassy scene for below our little basket. I did decide I wanted to add some more, so you can go back and apply the mask again and ink some more. You can add more harsh lines to some areas so you can really see the pattern if you want to. I did go with a Wink of Stella shimmer pen and add a little shimmer here and there too. And now I'm using the eraser to erase away that masking fluid. There we have the perfect masked basket with a die cut masked grass along the bottom. Just a quick example there. So there you have a bunch of examples of using masks to do inking on one layer cards. The sky is the limit with this technique. I hope you give it a try. Thank you for watching. I link to all the supplies below in my YouTube description, but go to my blog for much more information and photos. In the middle are some other masking videos that might be helpful to you. And if you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button so you can see more videos. Thanks for watching and have a great week.